There's no sports league unlike it anywhere in the world, where cartoons and football come together. This is the United States Cartoon Football League, celebrating its 40th anniversary.
Meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Stone Age family. From the town of Bedrock, they're a page right out of history. Let's ride with the family down the street, through the courtesy of friends to beat. When you're with the Flintstones, have a yabba-dabba-doo time, a dabba-doo time, we'll have a gay old time. Meet George Jetson, his boy Elroy, daughter Judy, Jane, his wife,
This is Robbie Graham speaking. The USCFL Network is pleased to present our newest competition of episode runoffs. This time, we are pitting two of Hanna-Barbera's greatest franchises, the Flintstones and The Jetsons. Before The Simpsons, these two shows were among the first full-length animated primetime shows, and originally we were going to pit the Flintstones against The Simpsons, but we will use The Simpsons in another episode runoff. The Flintstones was the first primetime full-length animated show. It aired on ABC for 6 seasons from 1960 to 1966 and aired 166 episodes. The show was originally based off of The Honeymooners and eventually hit Saturday mornings in the 1970s with new versions of the show. Then you have The Jetsons, the space age version of the Flintstones. It too aired on ABC in 1962, but for only 26 episodes. However, in the 1980s, the show returned with new episodes and ran for 2 additional seasons for a total of 75 episodes. The Jetsons were one of 2 Hanna-Barbera shows that originally aired in the 1960s and were brought back in the 1980s. Johnny Quest was the other. Here's how this contest will work. This will be a 12-round event, and of course, football scoring will be used from 0 to 8. Unlike previous episode runoffs, where we use predetermined selected episodes, I will have Bob Wilson choose the shows based on how they are in our library in alphabetical order. As always, Bob will give you his reviews and scores. With that said, here once again to preside over this new contest is your host and senior moderator of the USCFL, Bob Wilson.
Greetings, cartoon and football fans, and especially fans of classic Hanna-Barbera programs. This is Bob Mozark of the USCFL Network welcoming you to the new Flintstones Jetsons episode runoff challenge. We'll be running this challenge while we wait for new episodes of Masters of the Universe Revelations to be aired. This time, we are featuring two classic Hanna-Barbera primetime cartoons from the early 1960s. Football scoring will be used from 0 to 8 points. We will pit one randomly selected episode of the Flintstones against a randomly selected episode of the Jetsons. As we enter round one, which series will prove to be the better? We will briefly pause before returning with the episode reviews.
Stood there boldly, sweating in the sun. Felt like a million, felt like number one. The height of summer, I'd never felt that strong, like a rock. I was 18, didn't have a care, working for peanuts, not a dime to spare. But I was leaning, solid everywhere, like a rock.
The Flintstones, Season 2, Episode 45, A Star is Almost Born. Betty and Wilma are passing their afternoon by shopping for expensive clothes, which they take home on approval and return the next day. They decide to stop for a meal at a drugstore that Wilma read about, where would-be actors hang out to be discovered. When the two women find out that no food is available, they start to leave, but they bump into a man who turns out to be Norman Rockbind, a famous TV producer. He is taken with Wilma's beauty and offers a job to her in his new production. Fred overreacts as usual to the news and tricks Barney into investing $150 for acting lessons for Wilma. The $150 is later increased to $200 for beauty products. Fred also quits his job at the rock quarry to be Wilma's full-time manager. When it turns out that the job involves being a hand model for a lotion commercial, Fred calls the acting deal off. On their way home, Wilma brings Fred to his senses, but when he calls Rockbind, he finds out that Wilma has already been replaced. Wilma goes to Mr. Slate to ask for Fred's job back, as she knows Fred will be too proud to do so, and they need to pay Barney the $200 back. Fred starts to sabotage his chance to get his job back, but Wilma stops him. Later, Barney comes over, and as they watch the program, they find out that Betty was the one hired to replace Wilma as the hand model. One of the pleasures of watching the Flintstones was the many illusions that are in the program. I spotted Schwab's Pharmacy in Hollywood, Festus from Gunsmoke, the musical My Fair Lady, and entrances by actress Loretta Young, and boxers Rocky Graziano and Ingemar Johansson and Bell Telephone as some of the homages that were in this episode. The Jetsons, Season 1, Episode 2, A Date with Jet Screamer. The episode starts with George stuck in rush hour traffic on his way home from work. His attempts at weaving through traffic gets him ticketed by Officer O'Ranium, the first of his several appearances in the show. When George gets home, to his displeasure, He finds that Judy is hosting the Jet Screamer fan club, which is waiting for the show to start airing. Judy decides to enter a contest to submit new song lyrics for Jet Screamer, but George plans to sabotage her entry by substituting a secret code used by Elmo and his friends. To his surprise, Judy's entry is chosen, and she wins the date with Jet Screamer as his prize. George secretly follows the pair to chaperone their activities, but misunderstands some of their remarks and thinks that the relationship is more serious than it actually is. George bribes the drummer on the Jet Screamer show so that he can be on the stage, and ends up being featured in a drum solo to start the show. When George and Judy return home, Jane is surprised to find out that George is now the president of the Jet Screamer fan club. The Jetsons also had a few allusions, including 1950s teenage heartthrobs, the musical My Fair Lady, once again, and the puppet Senior Wentz's famous "S'all right" saying. We will now briefly pause before returning with the scores and wrap-up.
I told you about living in the U.S. of A. Don't you know that I'm a gangster of love? Let me tell you people that I found a new way, and I'm tired of all this talk about love. And the same old story with a new set of words about the good and the bad and the poor. And the times keep on changing, so I'm keeping on top of every fat cat who walks through my door. I'm a space cowboy. Bet you weren't ready for that. I'm a space cowboy.
Wrap up. The Flintstones, A Star is Almost Born, is a typical episode for that show, which featured Fred's idiocy. I give it a 6, mostly for the many allusions. The Jetsons, A Date with Jet Screamer, is a classic episode of the program, one that soundly established Judy's personality. I give it a 7. As always, viewers are welcome to submit their own reviews and scores. This is Bob Mozart from the USCFL Network signing off until next week.